Since we're talking about Jesus, let's go back to this crucifixion. That's a huge question. Most of us have been taught in our Bible schools and our seminaries to confront the whole notion of the resurrection and to defend the resurrection. Not confront it, but defend it. With Muslims, you've got to go back to the crucifixion. It makes no sense to even talk about the resurrection because they don't believe Jesus died. They believe another man died. He took his place, so therefore it stands to reason that he was alive 3 days later. So we've got to confront the crucifixion. And you've got to start with the Quran again. I keep on coming back to the Quran. I know you're going to get tired of it. But you've got to go back to chapter 4, verse 157. Now, here are 5 things you can do real quickly on confronting the crucifixion in the Quran. First and foremost, use and show that the Quran contradicts itself on this point. Chapter 4, verse 157 says he did not die, but chapter 19, verse 33 is very clear that he did die. Jesus, Isa himself says, "Blessed be me the day I was born, the day I die, and the day I rise again." There's an internal contradiction. In chapter 3, verse 55, it's very clear that God is saying to Jesus, I will mutawafika, I will cause you to die. There it is in the Arabic. It's not in the English translation. It is in the Arabic. And they've taken that out of the English translation, thinking we don't know Arabic. We do know Arabic. Mutawafika, ask anybody who speaks Arabic, I will cause you to die. That's also repeated in chapter 5, verse 117. There is an internal contradiction. Then you have a theological contradiction. In chapter 6, verse 164 of the Quran, and in chapter 50, verse 38, it says nobody can take on the guilt of another. No one can take on my guilt or your guilt. Then who was that on the cross dying in Jesus' place in chapter 4, verse 157? There's a theological contradiction. Then you can use the historical argument. Ask any Muslim to show you a historian for the first 600 years that denies the crucifixion. And help them out. Go back to the first century. Go back to Thales, who is debating Phlegon there in 52 AD about the death of Jesus, the crucifixion, and mentioning that on the day Jesus died, the earth shook and the sun went dark. That's a Greek historian. He's not a Christian, arguing in 52 AD. That's 20 years after the crucifixion. I don't think you can get any closer than that. Try Tacitus, Roman historian, who's arguing in the first century, beginning of the second century, hated Christians, had nothing good to say about Christians, yet he is mentioning the death of Jesus Christ under Pontius Pilate during the time of Tiberius, proving that it had to happen in 33 AD. So I've given you now a Greek historian, I've given you a Roman historian. Let's try a Jewish historian, Josephus, a third historian, writing at the beginning of the second century, not only mentions the death of Jesus, also mentions that the Christians believe he rose from the dead, the only non-biblical reference we have to the resurrection. So I've given you now 3 historians, Greek, Roman, and Jewish. None of them were friendly to Christians. In fact, they were quite hostile to Christianity. Now, I asked the Muslim, show me one historian until the Quran that denies them. Now then we go to the eyewitness account. See, the Quranic account, this one here, chapter 4, verse 157, is written according to Islam in the 7th century. That's 600 years later. I'm not happy with that. I want someone that was actually there. An eyewitness, even better than the hostile witnesses. Do we have eyewitnesses? Yes, we do. Why not John? John was at the foot of the cross, was he not? Did he not know Jesus? He had been with Jesus for 3 years. Therefore, he would have known who he was on the cross. He would have been able to identify it. What about Mary, the mother of Jesus? She was at the foot of the cross. She knew Jesus for 33 years. I can't think of a better witness than the mother. She would certainly know who her son was. And what about the man on the cross? If it was not Jesus on the cross, if another man was given his image and he was dying on the cross, wouldn't he have said something about it? You got the wrong man. It's obviously that the man on the cross was Jesus Christ, because look and see what he did say. This is not a man who's being duped. He looks down at those who are crucifying him and he says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. That does not sound like a man who should not have been there. And then, of course, probably the most difficult argument for Muslims would be the moral argument. If Jesus did not die on the cross, then what was he doing 3 days later, going into the upper room, appearing to the disciples as if he had come back from the dead? A week later, when Thomas even questioned about it, he showed the holes in his hands and his feet, proving that it was he. No prophet I know lies like that. And what about the God of Islam? What about Allah, this God here? Takes the image of Jesus, puts it on another man, lets that man die in Jesus' place and not tell anybody for 600 years. And then 600 years later, he suddenly says, well, let me tell this man over here in Arabia who cannot read or write. Let me tell him the truth. What kind of God is like that? Not my God. I want nothing like that. Thank goodness my God is not a moral God. My God does not deceive. Come on home. This is the better story. This is the better man. Can you see? Those 5 arguments right there, I have yet in 40 years seen a Muslim that can answer them.